times moms and dads get busy. Some hold down two jobs to make ends meet. But this is a poem about a very wise man making a very wise investment. In fact, that's what the poem's called, The Investment. Catfish in shady, cool slumber under an old covered bridge. Willows hang low, their leafy fingers caress slow-moving water. Corks tied to lazy lines float near old Moss Ridge. Memories are being made by a freckle-faced boy and a very wise father. 8 is God's number for new beginnings, and 1888 is the name of this poem. And the story happened right around 1888. Before the streets were ever paved, Phoebe baked pies in Phoenix. In a wood-burning oven the pies were made, leaf canvas stretched for needed shade. The cattle bawled, the dust bowled up, and drunks fell at her feet. Her reputation grew, as did her bank account, because her pies were so good. Then one day it happened. To everyone's chagrin, Phoebe left Phoenix never to be heard from again. To say the least, it was baffling. Most agreed with the postmaster, who presumed that her disappearance had to do with a letter or two which she had tried to hide. I suppose, however, that no one will ever really know why, except me and my mail-order bride. This is called Eskimo Delight. Dying campfire throws nervous shadows on things barely seen. Snow and temperature dropping, tree limbs popping as sap freezes within. Shadows darken, sled dogs hearken to the cry of wind and wolves. Strong coffee perking, caribou jerky, and me in this Kodiak rug with little Miss Laura Lee Warmblood. This poem's called Guess Who? Howling winds, hurricane forces, desert storm blinding the horses, determined posse not far behind, fellow outlaw losing his mind. Shadowed sun, 100 degrees, screaming wind covers my pleas. I surrender, for goodness sake, my partner's been bit by a rattlesnake. Empty canteen, nothing to eat. Oblivious to me, the posse retreats. Saddlebags filled with bank vault loot. One bullet left. Who will I shoot? Sometimes cowboys work all year round, and when they get the herd to their final destination, the trail boss turns them loose to have some fun. And this is called A Few Days in Old Tucson. With pistols drawn and blazing, he stumbles down the street, a harmless cowboy celebrating drunkenness. After a night in the hoosgow, he'll be on his way to remote sagebrush and tumbleweeds and the doggies he must herd. As the months go by, he will think about and brag about this adventure, dreaming all the while about what he will do the next time. I believe in the Lord with all my heart, and I believe in miracles. And this poem deals with a miracle. It deals with a family that's out in the wilderness, and they've carved a hole in the bank of a river that had changed course, and they used it as a place of shelter. And the riverbank was sharp and steep, and the poem says that they were starving. They were safe. And when they awoke to a wind of hurricane force, the abode cut into sheer bank of the river had changed course. We felt the rumbling sound, and while listening to the roar, 100 stampeding buffalo landed right before our door. So they had food after all. Here's about a guy that did something he shouldn't have done. He wasn't very gracious nor very kind. He had the right to do it, but it didn't end well. It's called July Vanity. Invisible vapor rises from desert floor. If I cock my head just right and squint, I can see what I have never seen before. Of course, I never took the time, nor was I ever so inclined for such an angled view as this, made possible by this bullet in my chest. Oh, come back, my spirit. Why must you mingle with these waves of heated emptiness? Goodbye, faithful pony. Goodbye, thirsty cattle. Goodbye, angry neighbor. I should have never built a fence around this water hole. This one's called Whiskers. And once again, it's from this time era, way back in old Western days. They nodded when passing, but their eyes never met. The old man was called Whiskers, and the other was called Jeff. Whiskers, with hands that shook, was always at the bar. Jeff was straight and tall and always wore a star. They seemed to know each other, but neither cared to say until a tragedy happened one hot September day. 3 drunken vaqueros with weapons drawn and aimed had Whiskers on his knees, demanding his true name. As the lawman turned the corner, his eyes took in the scene. His pistols cleared its holster. He had never been this mean. The curious drifted closer as the smoke began to clear. They saw Jeff helping Whiskers with 3 bodies lying near. Everyone discovered, after all was said and done, that Whiskers had been an outlaw, and the sheriff was his son. Now Jeff is still the sheriff with the oldest deputy around, and a secret kept by 2 is now kept by the whole town. Nothing beats good work. Examining the work of our hands, we should say, they did good, they did good. We're like God in that way, and we could. Yes, we could. Ford the mighty river while there's time. Fell the trees and bind them together. Cross the raging waters before the winter says no. Ford her now and be on your way. Overcome her arrogance and go. You have mountains to climb and poems to rhyme and a house to build and a wife to bed. Don't say tomorrow, for the leaves have fallen and the trees are begging to be rafted. You must conquer the river now. She will change course after the snow, and things will be different on the other side. I wrote this poem while traveling with a friend near Dallas, Texas. And I saw up on the hill an old wooden fence that was drooping and falling down. And so I started the poem, and it wound up like this. Weathered wooden fence, leaning and drooping at both ends, kept children, piglets, and a few Red Island hens. A few red Rhode Island hens. Icy, or ivy-covered chimney, rather, with morning glories on one side, locates the fallen home place where the weeds now try to hide. Great-great-grandma and grandpa rest in graves not far away, in a shady little grove where they often went to pray. Sunbent and calloused hard, powder and ball not far from hand, from sun up till way past dark, they pioneered this land, where intimidating skyscrapers and condominiums now thrive along this confounded bumper-to-bumper traffic on Interstate I-35. Long knives refer to the U.S. Mounted Cavalry, and the poem is called Remembering the Buffalo. Long knives pursue fire-watered renegades well within the entrapment. Now light-colored hair hangs from Indian belts, and whooping braves ride hard, remembering the buffalo. This poem is called Clickety-Click, Clickety-Click. The grooves in that old wagon wheel were made by my grandpa when he was a boy about your age. As the covered wagon made its way westward, he wore out sticks against the spokes, listening to the sounds they made. You can picture that, can't you? Well, there's a couple of longer poems here. Do I have time to read a long poem? Well, then, I'll read to you about the circuit rider. In olden times, they would ride a circuit. They would preach first in one little country community and then at another. And they would travel around preaching where they could. This one's about a preacher who fell in love with one of his parishioners. And it broke his heart. Well, let's just see how it goes. Snatches of song stole over the glen as the young parson headed her way. 3 times before and now once again to brighten an overcast day. Softer the words, the closer he came. Tender the song that he sung. Merry the sparks that burst into flame, for in his heart love had begun. Smitten the very first time he saw her, oh, what a fortuitous day. It was then that he argued with God like a lawyer to end his circuitous way. Melancholy winds began to stir. Shadows from the crypt arose. An omen of zombies waltzed in a whir, bringing a stench to his nose. His singing ceased, but the music grew, a subtle strategy Satan devised. Dancing a dervish, vacating their pew, thoughts clamored to be recognized. There was no gold in the gravel bars along this river of thought. There was more hope of reaching the stars than for this woman he sought. Falling from saddle upon his knees, he wished above all to be dead. They could have married before first freeze, except she already was wed. Snatches of dirt stole over the veil as the young parson prayed and prayed. All of creation was moved by his wail, while shadows regressed to their grave. Today he travels a different route, circling this battlefield wide, singing snatches of song without any doubt, somewhat older, but sanctified. The word sanctified means set apart for holy purpose. And he had a wrestling match appear in his mind. When he fell from the horse, he began to wail and he began to pray because he knew it was wrong. But he still loved her. And it hurt. But he got the victory. He got the victory. He got the victory. And now he travels a different circuit. And the dervishes, the devils, had to return to the hell from which they came. And he would not be tempted to go beyond the ways of the Lord and the truth that he knew was right.